guys, we're ready. Good evening. Welcome to City of Smyrna Planning and Zoning meeting for February 13th, 2017. This is at 6 p.m. and this meeting's called to order. At this time, we'd like to ask that all your electronic devices be turned off as they have a tendency to interfere with our recording equipment. For those of you joining us for the first time, this meeting is conducted much like a council meeting. As such, each application will include a presentation from city staff, followed by a question and answer session between staff and the board. Following staff's presentation, we'll have the applicant present their case and answer any questions from the board. Once all the questions have been satisfied, we'll have an opportunity for anyone in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to the application. We ask that you come forward one at a time, state your name and address for the record, sign the sign-in sheet at the podium, and please direct all your comments to the board. All right, the first item on our agenda is 2017-70. This is zoning case Z17002.
Mr. Chairman.
This is, let me read it and then you can go.
Okay.
This is rezoning from NS to OI, conditional for the development of a 17,500 square foot church. This is 5.5 acres in land lot 700, the southeastern corner of the intersection of Atlanta Road and Campbell Road. The applicant is Covenant United Methodist Church. And Mr. Roberts.
Yes, as a contiguous property owner, I want to recuse myself for this vote.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. And Mr. Roberts is going to recuse himself from this item. Mr. Martin, the background, please.
Good evening. This zoning request you guys will hear tonight, and you'll make a recommendation to mayor and council. Mayor and council make the final decision, hold a public hearing, and make the final decision on March 20th. So we'll go on from here. This property is an unaddressed property. It's located at the pretty much the intersection of Campbell Road and Atlanta Road. The entire property is 7.5 acres in size. The applicant is proposing to rezone 5.5 of those acres from neighborhood shopping to office institutional. The remaining 2 acres will remain zoned neighborhood shopping. This property is located in Ward 1, and the applicant is proposing to build a 17,500 square foot church. The future land use map has a land use designation of medium density residential, which allows density up to 6 units per acre. The applicant is proposing to change that land use designation to neighborhood activity center. If you look around the surrounding properties, the property to the north has a medium density residential zoning category. The properties to the east have suburban residential. The properties to the south, the apartment complex is urban residential, and the properties to the west are medium density and urban. Here's the proposed site plan for the development. As you can see, they've got one access off of Atlanta Road and one off of Campbell Road. They're proposing building setbacks of 50 foot on the front, 15 on the side, and 40 on the rear. These are the minimum building setbacks established for the O&I zoning district, and they'll meet those. As I stated before, you'll have a right-in, right-out access at Atlanta Road, and then a full access on Campbell Road. For the 350-seat sanctuary associated with the rezoning in the church, they'll be required to provide 140 parking spaces, so they meet the minimum requirement for parking. And there's the proposed stormwater detention facility and their proposed location. As part of this request, they are requesting 2 variances. Section 503 of the zoning ordinance requires all properties over 5 acres in size must provide a 50-foot undisturbed or 50-foot landscape buffer between the non-residential use and the adjoining residential uses. So along the eastern property line, which is on the top of the page, they're requesting to reduce that 50-foot buffer from 50 feet down to 15. And then on the southern property line, which is on the right-hand side, along the apartment complex, they are proposing to reduce that buffer from 50 down to 10. Here's the proposed building elevation for the church. Along with the building elevation, they have provided a landscape cross section for the landscape buffer. As you can see, this is the portion that adjoins the single-family residential lots. They're proposing a 15-foot landscape buffer with a 6-foot privacy fence in that buffer, as well as maintaining existing trees and planting new trees, screening trees. Here's some pictures of the subject property as it stands today. And then some adjoining properties across Atlanta Road and behind the property in the adjoining apartment complex. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning from NS to OI with the following conditions. All of the conditions from section 1201 of the zoning ordinance related to building composition, stormwater management, underground utilities, traffic improvements, deceleration lanes, burying of debris on site, the tree ordinance, landscape plans, and an archaeological study. In addition to the standard conditions, staff is adding some special conditions. Number 11, the development shall maintain the following minimum setbacks: a front of 50, side of 15, and a rear of 40. 12 speaks to the composition of the dumpster enclosure and how it should match the church building. 13 requires all utility boxes to be screened from the public right-of-way. 15 requires a right-in, right-out driveway on Atlanta Road, and then requires the developer to provide interparcel access from that driveway to the corner lot. 16 requires the developer to provide signage for the church so that patrons that want to go southbound on Atlanta Road are directed to use the Campbell Road entrance. 17 requires any water and sanitary sewer improvements deemed necessary by the Public Works Director or the responsibility of the developer. 18 requires the dog leg that is shown in the site plan across the Campbell Road access to be straightened out and realigned. 19 requires the stormwater management pond shown on the plan to be able to accommodate the entire 7.5 acres. 20 requires a 50-foot landscape buffer along the single-family residential property lines, and 21 allows the developer to provide a 10-foot landscape buffer along that southern property line that adjoins the apartment use. And 22 ties the development of the site to the site plan submitted, and 23 ties the construction of the building and the architectural features to the plans that were submitted with zoning. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Martin?
Rusty, you may want to, just for the record and
hold
for
on a
the
second.
audience, to go back to 16. And basically, that's on-site signage.
That's on-site signage interior to the site that basically directs them to go to the Campbell Road entrance and go to the traffic light so they can head southbound on Atlanta Road. What we do not want to happen is if they go right out on Atlanta Road and then get into the left-hand lane and then try to do a U-turn around the median to go southbound. Those are dangerous conditions that we're trying to mitigate at this point.
So 16 is an internal signage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rusty, I have a feeling there may be a homeowner or two here who may have some questions concerning the current zoning and something that else you've discussed. First of all, the property is zoned NS, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that stands for neighborhood shopping.
Yes.
Also, you mentioned that the medium-density residential on the city's future development map. So on the future plan that you pulled together, this was originally the 7.5 acres was a residential. You didn't change the zoning, but that's what the plan was that you adopted some years ago for the 2030 development plan for Smyrna. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. My question is, what you're doing now is you're taking that plan that you had developed, the future developmental plan, and in 5.5 acres, you're converting that to church rather than residential.
Yes. The issue is the zoning map is the mechanism that gives you the right and the permitted uses on your property and tells you these are the list of permitted uses you're allowed to do by right today. So if they came in and they wanted to develop a little shopping center that met all the requirements of neighborhood shopping, they could do that provided they met all the stormwater management requirements, all the tree requirements, soil and erosion. They could do that today. The future land use map, the 2030 comprehensive plan, called this area out as medium density residential, which doesn't really follow what they're currently allowed to do on that. So to bring this zoning in line with what is actually being built to be able to be reflected on the comprehensive plan, we have to amend the comprehensive plan from medium density residential to neighborhood activity center.
You're not necessarily saying that this is the best use of this land, but they do meet a criteria, right?
What I'm saying is right now the zoning gives the property owner by right more uses than what the comprehensive plan is currently calling for. So we're just trying to match those two plans together.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Martin? Ms. Hine-Warren.
Has the city or the engineer studied the impact that will still come onto Campbell Road, even if we're pushing people in that direction? I know that sitting at that light already is quite long.
I'll let the city engineer answer that for you.
Okay,
Are there any other zoning related questions? No?
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Eric, you don't wait a second. I got a feeling there's going to be a few more comments that are made, and we may need some more input from you, save a trip. All right. At this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit about your case. Mr. Moore, good evening. Welcome. Not that we're that intimate or anything, but you do share the exact same name with my brother-in-law.
Okay, that's not me though.
No,
So
it's
we share
definitely
the
not you, but it's embedded
But that's not a
in my
bad
mind.
thing.
No, not at
Okay,
all.
good.
I'm sorry.
Good.
He's anyway. Mr. Moore, good evening.
Sure. Good evening. And for the record, my name is Kevin Moore. I'm here on behalf of Covenant United Methodist Church in this application for rezoning. I think Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining the application, at least the technical aspects of what is being proposed, as well as reviewing and answering on that to a certain extent as well. Again, this is a 5.5 acre site. This property is actually 7.5 acres in total. And what is being proposed is for this 5.5 acres to be rezoned to O&I office institutional conditional for use as a church for the Covenant United Methodist Church. Thereby by picking up on the institutional aspect of office and institutional zoning. I think it's important, as Mr. Martin suggested and talked about, this property is currently zoned neighborhood shopping. So tomorrow, the owner could develop by right a shopping center or other of the many uses allowed under neighborhood shopping for retail type uses without coming before this body, without coming before the city council for any review, simply meeting the as long as the plans met those requirements without any review for that type of use. It's been zoned neighborhood shopping for a very, very long time. What's being proposed here is a downzoning to a less intense use than what is currently allowed on the property as a office institutional zoning for a church. We also believe that the use actually is much more appropriate given its proximity to surrounding residential, given its proximity to surrounding multifamily, surrounding attached townhomes, and the large school that's also on the other side of the intersection of Campbell Road and Atlanta Road. As a church, its use is limited. Many of us, hopefully a lot of us, are familiar with how a church operates. It is not an everyday operation in terms of the number of people that visit. It has its office staff, and it's fairly limited except at certain times. Those times are well established and well known on Sunday in particular when the heaviest traffic or use occurs, and that occurs on a day when you have much and far less traffic on your other roads, Atlanta Road and Campbell Road in particular. Compared that to a neighborhood shopping use, which it's zoned for and could be used for today. Neighborhood shopping, the retail uses, those are constant uses every day, Monday through Sunday, typically, of use and activity and far more intense than what would be proposed here as a church that would occur, would add to the traffic impact, that would add to the general activity that affects even the neighbors to the rear. As medium density residential in the land use plan, I want to speak to that since that was a question that was brought up. The land use plan is just that. It's a plan. It's a guide that the city can rely upon and use from time and look to as what is the potential future projected growth. It doesn't always work out that way. It's simply a guide, one that you can look to as a planning document. Under medium density residential, this property was projected over the next 30 years to be developed for residential having a density of up to 6 units per acre. So potentially up to 30 or 42 units that would be on this property. Typically that would be as attached units just like the ones next door and just like the ones across the street. Residential, been a fine residential project. That also, though, carries with it a certain amount of daily activity. It carries with it a certain amount of daily traffic impact that does not occur with this proposed use as a church. The actual site plan and layout that you see before you on the site plan, you see that the church faces Atlanta Road. You see that the parking and circulation is to the rear, and that's intentional. You want to have that church presence on Atlanta Road and not simply have a field of parking on Atlanta Road. And you see from the actual elevations that have been submitted how attractive this will be and how attractive this will look on Atlanta Road and project that. In addition, with parking, it's a very limited use and interruption and impact on the adjoining neighbors. Yes, the property owner is retaining the 2-acre piece at the corner that is not part of this rezoning, and it will remain zoned neighborhood shopping until sometime as either somebody buys it and develops that property as neighborhood shopping, or it's brought in for rezoning and comes before this body and the city council. But that's for some future use. As part of this, though, there is a portion of the property that's not going to be developed, the 5.5 acres, that is left for future expansion of the church. As you may know, with the church, there's really always 2 phases to a new church development. Phase one is what's their existing needs with some built-in growth, and which is proposed here. This is a 350-seat sanctuary and a beautiful church building, but there's also the ability to have future expansion for that phase two that hopefully comes with the growth of a church in this particular location. And that's being set aside so that that future growth can occur and can occur in a planned manner and not overload the site. When we look to one of the issues I know that is here, it's not supported by staff, though staff supports the proposed use and staff supports the proposed rezoning and staff supports the proposed change in the future land use. Staff has not supported a variance requested to the rear of this property for a reduction of the required 50-foot buffer to 15 feet. And from our standpoint, though, the 50-foot buffer requirement is there to provide separation in uses between the residential to this off of Campbell Road and a non-residential use. But here, the property, as you can see, is longer than it is, has more length than it does have depth. In addition, from a buffer standpoint, if you instituted a 50-foot buffer here, what it does is it removes an entire row of parking to the rear. And you can see that on the site plan very clearly, that it removes parking which has to be replaced. One of the issues a church always has is it has to make sure it has ample parking and sufficient parking, not only for current needs but future needs as it grows. The last thing that you would want to see here is to have insufficient parking for a church. With that, parking would have to be replaced somewhere else on site and would either very much cut into and inhibit the future growth of the church, or you would have fields of parking where, or parking where it simply is not aesthetically pleasing at all from Atlanta Road. In addition, when compared to the possible uses today, and that is the possible uses of neighborhood shopping as it's currently zoned, with all the activity that comes with neighborhood shopping, versus a church use, where you have very seldom use of that rear parking area, except on really on Sundays or other types of seldom, the rare bigger events you might have at a church. What we've proposed, and I'm going to flip to it, is the buffer plan. And just use the arrows, is that right, Rusty? To flip to that. Yes. And this is the landscape buffer cross-section that we have included in our package in our submittal for the 15-foot buffer that would be provided there. Number one is a 6-foot tall wood privacy fence that would be maintained by the church, and you'll see that that fence is being placed at the 10-foot line, not being placed on the property line. Our view of the property is that there's existing trees along this whole area, along the rear. By placing it 10 feet off of the line, we're able to then maintain and save a number of those trees. And then we'd have additional plantings behind that fence, which will then cut down on any glare from cars that might be parked there, to the extent the fence does not do that as well. So they're more than amply providing for the screening here, and in fact, making sure there's a 10-foot space there in addition to where the property line is before the fence even comes down, as well as heavily landscaping with trees and evergreens throughout that additional 5-foot area to create what we think is an ample buffer given the use that is proposed here of a church, given the lack of activity that would occur, keeping in mind that under either the existing zoning of neighborhood shopping or even the proposed and current future land use, which would have up to 6 units per acre here without a buffer, that those uses would have far more impact on the adjoining residences than what is being proposed here, and that is the very limited use of a church and certainly what is being proposed in terms of the use of this buffer area for that reason. In addition, staff has made other recommendations and conditions, all of which the applicant is in agreement with, except for there's 2 I would simply want to mention to you that we cannot simply state. I can't state today that we are 100% in agreement. One is, and they both have for the same reason. One is the requirement for recommended requirement of interparcel access for the Atlanta Road access point. So there's only one access off of Atlanta Road for both the remaining 2-acre parcel and the church. While the reason being is that that takes the agreement of the property owner, Ms. McKenna, and we can't agree on her behalf. We've contacted her as the seller and hope to work through the issues that would create, but we don't want to stand here tonight and commit something on her behalf that we can't do because that 2 acres we're not buying, the church is not. And the same goes for the stormwater detention requirement for a single stormwater detention facility to serve the entire 7.5 acre site. Again, that takes agreement from the seller and takes agreement from the adjoining owner, which will be Ms. McKenna after this transaction hopefully takes place. We're working with her on that and think that that will come to fruition, but I don't have that commitment from her, and it takes the 2 property owners to agree to that. And so we're going to continue to work on both of those items. I just can't say I'm in agreement with it tonight. I hope y'all understand that. We've gotten that and we've engaged to that end. I think those are good ideas, but we need to make sure that we have proper authority to do so and combine that. With that, we believe this is an excellent application, not only from a use standpoint. It provides what we believe is the least intense use that could be placed on this property, both from a current zoning standpoint and from a future land use standpoint. We also believe that the church is taking great pains to make sure they're presenting what I think is a beautiful church design that's been presented here, a site plan that provides for proper circular flow for traffic, for access to Campbell Road, as well as for access to Atlanta Road. With that, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. David Moore, pastor of Covenant United Methodist Church, is here, can answer questions, as well as Mr. Roland Davidson, who is the design professional as part of this project. And all of us are here as a team that can answer your questions, and we respectfully request your recommendation for approval to the mayor and city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. At this time, we'd like to ask if there are any questions for the applicant. Ms. Hine-Ward?
Is there a preschool planned? I see space on here for children's education.
There is not a preschool plan for here. This the only program they have of a similar nature. They have a Mother's Morning Out program that they run, but not a preschool or any kind of licensed certified school.
How many days a week does that operate?
You said that's currently 3.
So that does impact the traffic as well, 3 days a week at
There's-
9 and 1 o'clock.
There's, I think, no more than 20 at any one time for a Mother's Morning Out program, right?
And is there a future plan for the additional acreage, as you said, you've saved for another expansion to the school, whether it be in the pre-K area or even, additional grades?
There's nothing planned, no, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Moore?
Good evening, how are you?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm well.
Going back to the parking and the setbacks for the neighborhood and behind you, why wouldn't you just go ahead and take the other 2 acres and for your planned growth versus sacrificing the neighborhood behind you?
2 things. Number one, the owner only has us under contract for the 5.5 acres that's proposed. I wanted to retain the 2 acres at the corner, so it's not available to us. Number 2, we don't believe we're sacrificing anything for the neighbors. We think with the proposed use and the proposed buffer that the reduction is justified to establish and create proper traffic flow and proper areas for parking without having any impact on the neighbors. So we don't believe we're sacrificing anything for the neighbors to accomplish that.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have you back up here in a minute.
Let me turn back to the site plan, Rusty. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, this is a public hearing. At this time, we would like to open the floor for any citizens that are in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to this plan. You don't have to raise your hand. Just come forward one at a time, state your name and address for the record, and please sign the sign-in sheet at the podium.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Alexander, and my family moved to Smyrna in 1960 when I was 7 years old.
Good evening, Miss Alexander.
And I bought a home on Argyle Drive in 1981 and have thoroughly enjoyed living there and so close to the proximity of what was my high school. But some points that I would like to address. The 15-foot buffer, I think, does need to be at least at 50 feet per the code. they have not taken into consideration the valuation that this would have on the impact on our homes. I was standing in my kitchen and I looked out and I saw blue ribbons in the woods. And then I'm going, what's going on? This is before any signage was up. And I was quite surprised. I mean, I have no objection to the church going in there, but I think that I have to abide by what the rules are for Smyrna for keeping up my home, and I think they need to abide by what the code is for Smyrna. Secondly, I would like the privacy fence to be 8 feet. When I'm standing in my kitchen, I can see past 6 feet. I would like to know about the lighting for the parking lot. What is the direction of the lights? How long would they be on? I also would like to see a deceleration lane, an emerging lane for the ingress and egress to the church. I would like a little more specifics on who will maintain the buffer, because there's kudzu and ivy back there that just runs rampant in the summer and comes over our fences, and I'm out there spraying all the time. But we met at my home the other day, and we have a little sketch Maggie was kind enough to do that how we would like to see the parking, and I'll hand this to Rusty, on how we would like the parking to run so that it would not be in proximity, such close proximity to our homes. But one thing I was kind of surprised at, I went out and was reading on the Faith Methodist webpage letters that were out there from the minister, and they had in one of their letters that they plan for, in the future, a preschool program that would impact daily traffic and hopefully would be in morning and early afternoon so that it would not impact rush hour, but it would impact on a daily basis. So if you go out to their webpage, there was a letter that said that they received $6 million for Cumberland Methodist. And yes, I'm Methodist. I go to Smyrna First Methodist, so I have no objection to a Methodist church going there. But I do have an objection to the buffer zone, and I would appreciate your consideration on that matter.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alexander.
Fine.
Please don't let that happen again. All right. Is there anybody else in attendance that'd like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to this application to Z17-002? Good evening and welcome.
Hi, my name is Maggie Shannon. I live on 2060 Nancy Circle, Argyle Estates. So I have a couple questions. Have you actually bought the property, or is it contingent on the rezoning? Does anyone know?
They're under contract for the purchase of the property. So now I guess to answer your question,
So if the zoning doesn't happen for them, the rezoning, they won't purchase?
I would imagine that would be the case.
Okay.
If they can't get approval for what they would want to do on the site, there would be no point in buying it.
Right, so the purchase hasn't gone through. And then the other question is, once they purchase it and they find out they can't possibly do this, we still are there with institutional zoning?
If city staff probably needs to comment on that, but if the zoning were to be approved and nothing was acted for within a year, I believe it would revert to the existing zoning, but that would be a question for them.
Yeah, the zoning runs with the property. If they determine later on, even after they purchased it, that they can't do it any longer, they still have that zoning. But there is a time frame that the chairman referenced that they have to do something within a particular period of time, or we have the possibility of reverting it back. Doesn't mean we automatically will, but because it'll have to go through another hearing, but it would be up to the church to decide what they wanted to do.
Do you know what the timing is?
Off the top of my head, I think the chairman was right. I think it is a 12-month period.
12 months a year. Okay, then another question I have is, do you guys have first dibs on buying the corner property if the McKenna family decides to sell it?
we'll have to, we'll have to get them to answer that question.
Okay. And then for the future expansion, you don't know what's going to go there? It's just sort of left open?
We'll ask
for the
them those
moment?
questions again.
It would be nice to know what, because there's a whole, like, it looks like about 2.5 acres, half the property they're buying that's just left standing up for consideration. And I agree with Barbara Alexander that I think we definitely need the 50-foot buffer between her house. We went over there last night and could see clearly into the property and where the blue ribbons were. And if I lived on that, I would be very upset by it. And a 50-foot with an 8-foot fence, I completely agree with. That's it. And thank you.
Ms. Shannon. All right, anybody else in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to? Good evening and welcome.
Hey, how are you? Tom Bartlett. I live at 3270 Isoline Way, a street that runs perpendicular to Argyle in this proposed development. My biggest concern is because of where I live and how I would see the site is lighting and that parking in the rear. So that 50-foot buffer is something that I'm pretty concerned about. I think the lighting hopefully is spelled out a little bit more than just using the standard Georgia Power shoebox fixture for a parking lot. That's full cutoff, dark sky compliant. I don't know enough about the Georgia Power fixture.
That's part of the zoning condition. That's one of the standard conditions is
Okay.
that they provide full cutoff lighting.
What's the pole height?
It really depends on their coverage.
So I'd like
So
to set
they'll do a photometric plan to show that site's not, that the light is not leaving the site, and then it's meeting the minimum parking lot requirements for illumination across the site.
So versus having a 25-foot pole that they can space it 100 feet, I'd rather see something like a 16-foot pole, something that is really more addresses the neighbors.
To like a 16 or 25-foot pole.
16 versus 25 or higher. That's just something that I think would welcome them to the neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely.
And I am in favor. I mean, churches make better neighbors than grocery stores and automotive outlets.
Some churches.
Another clarification, I've seen it two different ways, the 50-foot buffer, landscape buffer, or is it a 50-foot undisturbed buffer? Or are those two the same thing?
Section 503 of the zoning ordinance states a 50-foot landscape buffer,
So it could be disturbed and graded
and then replanted,
and then replanted.
or they can leave the deciduous trees that are there, and there's not any true screening. There's tree trunks, but
Right. So that's just a clarification I wanted to make sure everybody was on board with. That's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Is there anybody else in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to the application?
Hi.
Good evening, welcome.
Carmen Roberts. I'm on the property at 2070 Argyle Drive.
Good evening, Ms. Roberts.
Hello. And just wanted to second, or third rather, the request for the 50-foot buffer as well as the 8-foot privacy fence, and also to express concern about the lighting because our property line is directly behind that particular development, and as they've noted, the blue tags that have been placed in the yard, so there is a definite concern there, and just wanted to reinforce that we're all, I think, we've met and as a neighborhood are very concerned about that.
About
So
the
thank you.
50-foot buffer and the lighting, duly noted. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. We've had a bevy of questions about the buffer, the lighting. There was a question specific for Mr. Eric Randall, the city engineer. If you could come and speak to that. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure you wrote it down.
Noted a couple items to address, and for the record, I'm Eric Randall, I'm the city engineer. You had a question about Campbell Road traffic, and do you enjoy sitting at any lights? I'm sorry, signals. Lights illuminate, signals allow. The answer is we do not do or have required a specific traffic study for this particular development. We do periodically go through and evaluate traffic loads. As this comes back online, I would look back at the timing at this traffic signal, particularly at peak hour. Candidly, for a church, we're really going to be looking at Sunday morning, and does something need to happen with that? I would be more inclined to think for traffic management, the church would look at hiring a police officer for Sunday mornings. I wouldn't put anything on the infrastructure that would affect daily traffic for what happens once a week on a Sunday, or a couple of times a week on Sunday, depending on the time of their services. There was also a comment made requesting acceleration and deceleration lanes. This entrance would already be in the existing turn lane and decel lane that was provided on Atlanta Road for the school buses. So what I would look at during the construction documents is extending the deceleration lane as needed to provide 150 foot. I don't want to bring it all the way up to the existing apartment entrance, which is now, what is it, Rock Creek now?
Yes.
To the Rock Creek Apartments. I'd want to keep a curb bump out there to preclude daily traffic from hopping over there too soon and running the whole way up from the apartments. But to the point that was requested, that's where I would extend the deceleration lane, and they're pulling into a right turn lane. So we'd have to look at what the striping is, but those can both be accomplished during plan review, and I don't believe they warrant zoning stipulations. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Randall?
Eric,
I think it'd be beneficial. I understand what Mr. Moore talked about needing the property owner's permission, but I would stress, and when I would ask you to comment, the property owner is the one who owns all the 7.5 acres. So we're not dealing with two different property owners here. And the point of the requirement from access was because there isn't going to be another more than maybe a right turn into the remaining 2 acres, given the road stuff. And so that created the potential need for that lot. And so the city, through staff, is saying, we're going to have a future problem here if we don't address it now on that. Do you concur with
I do
that?
concur, and thanks for pointing that direction. I had overlooked those 2 stipulations. I was answering the direct questions. The 2 stipulations I'm referring to are just that, the interparcel access and the stormwater management. The point of the interparcel access is that as that corner parcel is developed, people will learn, hey, I can pull in here, or I may have to go around the corner. We would permit a right turn in only. It would not be a right turn out. But because of that, that then pushes any potential shopping and or retail function strictly to a Campbell Road exit by providing a cross-parcel access agreement in conjunction with this lot split that ensures that there will be provision made that whoever develops that corner has the right to come back through and use the proposed right in, right out at this church. It would mean that you would have the potential to turn right off of Atlanta Road and turn either right or left to cross over at the point either the balance of this parcel, but more specifically that the corner parcel is then developed. By kind of the same rationale, this is all one parcel at present time. One of the challenges we've found from an engineering standpoint in the city is as parcels are chopped up smaller, trying to provide stormwater management for these smaller and smaller parcels becomes challenging. Not only from the design standpoint, the tools that we have for stormwater management design are calibrated, if you will, for larger lots. You know, sites anywhere from 3 to 4 acres up to 200 acres
are the tools that we regularly use. If we get smaller sites, you wind up over detention. People invariably want to make the most use of that, and so they're going to underground detention. This results in maintenance issues and design issues for that. I proposed this stipulation for providing stormwater management to accommodate the entire 7.5 acre parcel at full build out, recognizing that pipes can be put in the ground at this point. At least the detention facility can be sized at this point before there's anything else in place, and work around it as the future goes forward, rather than parceling this up and providing detention for 2 acres at a time. So, can I clarify that at all for anybody?
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? Any other questions? Mr. Campo?
I have one question. If the zoning change is approved, what's the timing on starting of building of the church?
Certainly, the plan would be for this year, at some point, calendar year 2017, and I'm happy to have Pastor Moore answer that question, but he can also clarify the preschool question, since there seemed to be an issue there. I'd rather him clarify it.
Well, let's have him come.
If that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. I don't like to have competing versions of the
No,
same
absolutely.
question.
I appreciate that.
My name is David Moore. I'm the pastor at Covenant United Methodist Church, and no relation to the attorney representing us. Just to clarify that. So.
Or my brother-in-law.
Yeah, but and I just wanted to. I forget specifically which person it was, but said something about a website saying preschool, and she referenced Faith United Methodist Church. That may have been a previous pastor who wrote that. And if I wrote it, I misused preschool. It would be, we are still just thinking of the mothers or parents morning out. Less than 10 hours a week, very small. We have no plans for a licensed preschool, for a day school, that kind of stuff.
So the additional expansion area is not necessarily for a school, but just future growth of the church itself.
The future growth for the church, yes.
Yeah, I think anytime you see that large swath of unimproved dirt associated with a development like this, it just sends a little bit of concern that, we're missing part of the plan, that's all.
That would just be for larger Sunday attendance.
Oh, well, that'd be great.
We hope so, at some point. And it would be in line with the building, as far as the architecture that we're proposing already.
Any other questions for Pastor Moore? No? Thank you, sir.
Well, I was saying, could you address the lighting? It seems like, was there any plan? The neighbors seem concerned about that.
Okay. Sure, I can answer. I think I'm more familiar with, along the lines of what Mr. Martin stated, and that is, yes, there'll be a lighting plan. Lighting will be, environmentally sensitive. It'll have cutoff. It'll have down lighting, shoebox style, or other recommended lighting plans to ensure that lighting is extended only to the boundaries of this property and not beyond. There's a specific process that's followed there. It's part of the standard stipulations that the city staff recommends and that we're in full agreement with.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right. No further discussion? Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion. And since Mr. Roberts is not, this is not his ward, is it? It must be. So would somebody please make a motion for Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve 201770, the zoning request Z17002, based on staff's recommendations and conditions.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve Mr. Monroe, the application as presented by staff. We have a second. We have a second, Ms. Hine Warren. Please vote. It is approved 5-1. I didn't see who the one was, but all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore, Pastor Moore. Good luck. Yeah, and that is the approval. Thank you, Mr. Moore. The approval that they were just granted is based on staff's recommendation, which includes the 50-foot buffer. It did not reduce the buffer based on their request, okay? So they'll need to go to mayor and council and address any adjustment to that. So the 50-foot buffer is intact in this approval. Thank you, Mr. Moore. That was gracious. All right, Mr. Roberts, is he still sleeping? Okay, well, okay. Somebody would fetch Mr. Roberts. We'll get on to the next item, please. The next item on the agenda is 2017-71. This is zoning Z17003. This is the modification of the site plan. Ladies and gentlemen. Joey, would you clear the room? No, I'm just kidding. Let's give them a second to celebrate. Y'all have a good night. Don't let the, okay. This is zoning case Z17-003. It's a modification of the site plan and building elevations on an 82-acre tract in land lot 61, 171, 172, 174, 175, 176, and 284. This is Riverview Road from Nichols Drive to Dickerson Drive. The Ardent Companies is the applicant, and this is not the first time we're hearing about this property. Mr. Martin, background, please.
All right. This zoning amendment case is on the same track as the previous case. You guys will make a recommendation tonight, and then it'll go to mayor and council on March 20th for the final public hearing and final decision. This 82 acres is located on Riverview Road, pretty much in between Nichols Drive and Dickerson Drive. If you all remember, this property was originally rezoned in Cobb County in 2011, and then in 2013, the city annexed the property and accepted the development per the Cobb County zoning conditions and recommendation. Mayor and council approved that by a vote of 7-0, accepted it in. Since that time, there's been some site grading out there, as well as they are in the process of making improvements to Riverview Road. The applicant can probably give you an update as far as that's concerned. So we'll move on from there. The original zoning consisted of approximately 1,700 residential units that made up of townhome units, single family, senior housing, condominium, and multifamily apartment residential units. And all those units totaled to about 1,700 units. In addition, there was about 190,000 square feet of commercial space planned for the development. Since that initial zoning, the property has been sold to a new developer, which is the applicant, Ardent Companies. They are proposing to essentially downzone the property and modify the site plan and building elevations, and we'll get into that in a second. That plan pretty much eliminates the commercial use that was originally approved and significantly reduces the residential units from 1,700 units down to 608 units. This property is located in Ward 7 along the Chattahoochee River, and as I said, runs along Riverview Road. For the most part, the site is vacant. There's one shed structure out there, and I think one little office building. The applicant is proposing to downzone to 65 single-family homes, 233 townhomes, and 310 multifamily units. There's no zoning change associated with this, so it'll remain mixed-use conditional. The future land use map has this as mixed use. The future land use designation will remain the same as mixed use. The surrounding areas have pretty much industrial and medium density residential surrounding the property. This is a currently approved plan that the city accepted back in 2013. As you can see, they proposed 155 single-family units, 332 townhome units, 165 condo units, 200 senior units, 850 apartment units, and 190,000 square feet of commercial space. And those apartment units and condo units were all pretty much planned along the river on the east side of Riverview Road, and then the apartments, townhomes, and single family were on the west side, on the west side of Riverview Road. And this was some of the architecture they had proposed at that time. This is the proposed plan for the developer today. As you can see, they have, on the southern end of the site, they have the 310 apartment units that are split between 4 buildings, 1 building along the river, and then 3 buildings on the west side of Riverview Road. In addition, they have townhome units just south of the pond on the west side of Riverview Road and along the river. And then the 65 single-family homes, they are on the west side of Riverview Road, but they are north of the pond. Here they are. There's single-family homes, the townhomes, and then the multifamily units. There's the stormwater detention facility. It's an existing pond that's out there today. And approximately 24 acres of green space along the Chattahoochee River. There's trails out there today, along with a dock to launch canoes and stuff like that. Here's the proposed home elevations for the single-family homes. The proposed townhome elevations and the multifamily elevations. As part of the original zoning, the applicant provided a industrial buffer plan that showed the buffer areas from the adjoining industrial uses. And as part of the zoning, they established a zoning condition to meet these buffers. The applicant has submitted a buffer plan to show how those buffers would be reflected in the plan submitted for your approval tonight. And as you can see, I'll go back to the other one. they're relatively similar. There's not a whole lot of variation. In fact, per square footage, the the new plan adds about 1,000 square feet more of buffer area. This is a picture of the subject site and then adjoining industrial properties in the area. Community Development recommends approval of the zoning amendment with the following conditions carried over from the zoning case back in 2013, which was the 13-015. We've got a list of almost 80 stipulations. I don't want to go through them all and put you guys to sleep. They're provided to you in the staff recommendation. I showed you where all the changes were. Basically, those changes either amounted to a stipulation that's being removed because it has a commercial component to it. Since the commercial is being removed, the stipulation no longer applies. Or the stipulation referred to the zoning plan. So we had to amend the stipulation to reflect the new zoning plan that was submitted with the 65 single-family homes and the townhomes and in the apartments. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions for Mr. Martin?
Mr. Martin, a 24-acre green space, would that be a City of Smyrna park?
The applicant has submitted a letter stating they may be interested in dedicating that to the city if the city would be willing to accept that. Staff is currently working through whether or not the city wants to accept that. I think we can work that out between now and mayor and council or after the fact, either way.
Okay.
And if we accept it, then it's our expense to maintain it?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Ms. Hine-Warren?
Then residents would have access to it, because currently, if it stays as is and they don't donate it as a park, the city residents would not have access to that river space, correct?
I believe our plan is that they would either have to provide public access for the city or they would dedicate it and the city would have ownership and access.
So either way, it'd be access to the city.
Which they're agreeable either way.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Martin? Okay. Thank you, Rusty. At this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and tell us a little bit about your plan. Mr. Sams, good to see you.
Excellent to see you too, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, Huff, and Bally, and I represent the Arden companies in connection with this rezoning. I can't get used to Mr. Rice sitting on this side of the dais. He's always been over there, but I'll have to avert that distraction. I do represent the Arden companies. We have with us tonight Mr. Neville Allison of Arden, and I'm going to have him speak in just a little bit after I kind of tee it up and orient you with respect to what we're doing. Also have Mr. Kenneth Wood. He's our engineer from Planners and Engineers Collaborative. He and I have been working jointly on this as property since 2007 when we first talked to Green Street Properties in Jamestown. Jamestown was ultimately the owner of it and the entity which owned it the last time we came before you in the city council. You've seen the property before, many of you have. It was a former mixed-use development with about 2.3 million square feet of mixed-use space. It was an ambitious undertaking, particularly when it came before the Board of Commissioners in 2011 when the market hadn't rebounded. But once we annexed into the city, the market had rebounded significantly. But Jamestown decided, I don't know all the intricacies of their reasoning, but Jamestown has decided, because of the way it is funded by German and Dutch investors, that it needed to move money from one fund to another and put the property up for bid. The new urbanistic proposal that was before you back in 2013, it was simply and ultimately decided that this really lends itself more to a mixed residential utilization at an extremely lower density, as Mr. Martin has said. And Mr. Martin's done an excellent job, as he always does, in presenting this. But just to show you in juxtaposition to this with respect to the downzoning, we now show 65 single-family detached residences, whereas there were 155, 233 townhomes where there was 322, and then 310 multifamily, highly amenitized Class A multifamily units, and that was originally 850. This is an application, originally it had to come before the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority as a development of regional impact. They had to be revisited again once we annexed it into the city, and the city rezoned it. And the city rezoned it, and y'all recommended to pretty much replicate what the county had approved. Once again, upon filing this application, we've revisited with ARC and revisited with Greta. They've both given us the green light. Greta entered its notice of decision just last week, as a matter of fact, in conjunction with our traffic engineers, Kimley Horn. While this application has been pending, your professional staff has generated the stipulations you've seen, and they've done an excellent job because it was crafted to a mixed-use development, generally within the same parameters of the 82-acre tract, but it's all residential now where it was mixed use. We have a number of self-imposed stipulations and conditions in a letter dated February the 2nd, 2017, but what I would like to do is introduce to you, if I may at this time, Mr. Neville Allison of the Ardent Companies. We have some stunning new imagery that, you've seen sort of the schematic conceptual imagery that we submitted with the application and with the stipulation letter, but he has something to share with you from that perspective, but even more importantly, to let you know Ardent's plans for the property with a little more specificity. So I'm going to relinquish the podium at this time and introduce to you Mr. Neville Allison of Ardent.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. Mr. Allison. Good evening.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Neville Allison. I head up, pardon me, I head up residential acquisitions for the Ardent Companies. This has kind of been my project since day one. We couldn't be more excited to be here before you tonight and kind of pick up where Jamestown left off. And Rusty's going to cue up some slides I got here, and then I'll kind of walk you through a little bit of the history and what we see for the project.
I asked him to put some color on that last site plan because it was giving me vertigo.
Well, we're going to show you some color.
Very good.
All right. Well, I'm glad I got a chance to speak. I was afraid Mr. Garvis was going to steal all of my thunder, as he has a tendency to do. But you guys all are well aware of this project. Jamestown assembled it back in 2008. Many of you are probably tired of seeing it and it not come to fruition. Jamestown is without a doubt one of the most visionary developers in Atlanta. Anyone who's been to Ponce City Market can attest to that. We have nothing but respect for them. However, I think this project is an example, and I think they would admit this, to being a little either ahead of the market or overreaching. They had very grandiose plans, 5- and 6-story buildings, 200,000 square feet of retail. For anyone who's been in the area, knows this part of Southwest Smyrna, the retail struggles. On Veterans Memorial is a great example. It has, 10 times the traffic at least, and you see vacant retail centers left and right, and those that are filled are not exactly dynamic, exciting tenants. You see several hair salons and nail salons and insurance offices and vacant space, to be honest with you. Our intention is not to buy this property, sit on it for a long time and allow the market to mature. We're here to execute on the property. We're here to activate the site and revitalize the river, which I think is incredibly important, not just for the city of Smyrna, but for Atlanta as a whole. You visit other cities, the waterways and rivers are their beachfront property, and frankly, that's lacking in Atlanta. If you go to the park where 285 crosses Powers Ferry, I sit in traffic every day with people trying to pull in and out of that, 5-acre park that lines the river. We have the opportunity to create a 20-acre park here 3,500 feet of linear riverfront frontage that I think, again, will obviously, from a selfish standpoint, be an incredible amenity for our residents, but the rest of Smyrna as well. So that's what we've tried to create. As you see here before you, this is an aerial, pretty much of the site stands today. Jamestown purchased the property in 2008, entitled it with Cobb and then Smyrna. They did more than just some light grading on the site. They installed some pretty significant infrastructure horizontally. They cleaned up the riverbank, installed some walking trails, a cantilever dock along with a boat put in, some pavilions now that are in need of some maintenance, but that's at least a step forward in showing what can come here. Figure out how to scroll down. All right, help me out. There we go. All right, I got it. So here's a little colored version of our site plan. Again, about 233 townhomes, 65 single-family homes, and 310 apartments. To put it in perspective, Jamestown had 1,700 units planned here. That's a reduction in density of 65%. We think that's significant. What that's going to result in is a traffic reduction of 75%, which again, I think is important. You know, this is not a 4-lane road. There are other neighbors on this road, and those uses are a little different than ours. So I think that reduction in traffic is a positive. Here's a little highlighted site plan. As we showed, the buffers to our neighbors are incredibly important to us. We want to protect what's there as well as enhance our individual site. I think it's mutually beneficial. So we looked at the existing buffers that Jamestown had proposed and first and foremost said, let's not do anything to reduce those. And we actually went above and beyond and increased those buffers by almost 50,000 square feet. So that's a full acreage of increased buffers. I know there's some representatives here of the Chattahoochee Industrial Business Association that are happy to see that, and I think that's really important to them. So we had a meeting with those good folks last week. It was voluntary. The city didn't make us do it, but we wanted to. It's the way that we approach all of our developments, to gather neighborhood input and try to incorporate into our site the best we can. Jamestown, I know, had some black and white schematics for you. You know, one thing to keep in mind is I don't think Jamestown had specific users ready to go vertical, which is, again, part of the reason they decided to sell the site. Our intention is not to hold land here and wait for it to mature. We've sought out highly qualified vertical builders here, both for the multifamily and the for sale residential portions. Those builders are ready to go as soon as we can get through this zoning process and the permitting process with the city of Smyrna. Again, with the goal to activate the site as quickly as possible. This is a site from the east side of Riverview Road, standing in the park, looking up to what would be the riverfront apartment building. I know that Smyrna's greatest disappointment, both from its citizens, I would guess, as well as staff and some members of the council that I've had the pleasure of talking to about the planning of this project, is the loss of the retail. Again, everyone loves cool mixed use, a destination. This site can still be that. And what we wanted to do was figure out how to do retail on the site, but not have vacant shops sitting there and it be a failure. So what we've done is design this riverfront building with approximately 3,000 to 4,000 square feet of commercial space within the building to accommodate a coffee or donut shop. The idea being that not only can the 600 residents frequent this, but people that come down to the riverfront park can run up and grab a lemonade or a coffee, very similar to what Walton on the Chattahoochee does. Again, we think this is going to be better. We're going to execute it in a more accessible way. Their site is gated. You can go in and hit the call box and say you're there for the coffee shop, and they'll let you through. Here, we don't have gates. We want it to be accessible to the public. That's the idea. To address the question earlier about the ownership of the linear park, you know, I would say that to me personally and our company, the maintenance of that park is absolutely the most important thing with this site. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. So we are open to donating it to the city of Smyrna with a maintenance agreement. You know, as soon as we donate the land, there's the question of, well, then who controls that maintenance and who keeps the upkeep? We plan to form a very strong homeowners association that consists of both the apartments, the townhomes, and the single family. That all be paying into that HOA, which will contribute to the maintenance of this park. If only the residents of Riverview Landings HOA maintains control with a cost-sharing agreement to the city of Smyrna and liability agreement, obviously, for public access, we're completely open to that. These are just some shots through the proposed development. This is a shot along Riverview Road, which you can see is already under development. It's about 90% completed with on-street parking, bike lanes, as well as landscaping. The purpose of that not only was to create parking for their retail and what will be our linear park, but also to bring a majority of Riverview Road out of the floodplain, which is an issue for the city as well as concerned neighbors. This is a shot up Nichols shooting down towards the river. You can see it there in the background. That's the apartment buildings on the right. This is a typical proposed townhome elevation. As you can see, we've gotten very specific. We're trying to pull off the industrial feel of the area. We have some metal accents and brownstone style flat facades, which I think flows with the general theme of Riverview. We have 2 amenity areas planned for Riverview Landing in addition to the Riverfront Park. This is a shot of the first one that will serve the for sale townhomes and single family. It consists of a pool and a cabana. The apartments will also have their own separate amenity area. This is a shot from Riverview Road looking over the existing pond and detention area up to a typical streetscape for the single family homes. This is another shot of the Riverfront Park. Again, you know, I think this could be iconic for not only for Smyrna, but for the city of Atlanta. I can't tell you how much press we've gotten from folks wanting to know, you know, what our plans are. And frankly, out of respect for Smyrna and the process, we've held back from those stories because, frankly, we want the Planning Commission, staffs, and mayor and council's input as well to make sure that this is a successful project for everybody. It's another shot of the Riverview Park here. And then this is would be the far side of Riverview Road, looking at the existing dock and our streetscape behind it. With that, I'll reserve the rest of my time to answer questions and rebuttal. And again, we have our entire team here. We have both our apartment and representative of our for sale product here, and our engineer and Garvis, who.
Very good, Mr. Allison. All right, any questions for the applicant?
Just one real quick one. Sorry, I was
No.
trying to write it down, but I think you had senior living as in the original development, and I missed it. Is there senior living in this one?
As far as age-specific housing with assisted living, memory care, things like that, there is not. However, we see that townhomes are typically a lock-and-leave lifestyle, which our number one purchasers for that product tend to be millennials and active adults. So empty nesters that then downsize, don't want to leave the area, but want to have the lock and leave access to the airport, which is less than 20 minutes away. Midtown down Jesse Jackson Parkway is about 10 minutes away. The location is phenomenal.
Any other questions, Ms. Hine-Warren?
Mine's more of a comment than a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think as a resident, I can say for myself and many others that I've talked to about this, we're highly excited. Disappointed a little bit to hear that the commercial got kicked out, but I totally see the point of the community that you're trying to build. So I think that embedding the commercial within the community at the bottom levels is a great idea, and I hope that that stays part of the plan and opens up, just like you said, coffee shop, ice cream parlor, that kind of a community-based, you know, maybe a little thing. But other than that, I wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hine-Warren. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Allison.
Thank you.
Mr. Sams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Just a couple more things. And to respond to Ms. Hine-Ward's comment, your council person was one that was very much suggesting that we do just that. And our builder wants to do it, but I hearken back to our original conversations with her, and she was very happy if we could do something like that. There will be mandatory HOAs for all these residential communities, and so there'll be conditions, covenants, and restrictions with strict architectural controls. My client held in reserve being able to unveil the stunning imagery you saw tonight. We will be submitting that between now and the mayor and council meeting, so it'll be a matter of a public record, and so everyone will be able to see that. The network of trails along this 24-acre lineal park, I've spoken specifically with the city council member Ron Fennell, in whose ward this is located. And I bring this up not to drop names, but just simply to say how interested he is in establishing a lineal park here. From the very beginning, staff has hammered that they want public access to this park, whether it's owned by the city or whether it's owned by us. But notwithstanding who has the ultimate ownership in it, it is absolutely critical that maintenance be a key and focal point for all of our builders. And that'll be a decision hopefully we'll make between now and the mayor and council meeting. But notwithstanding that, the Arden companies will be building the parking that goes with the park and the ancillary components of that. Some of the more salient stipulations and conditions, we have set this up so that your professional staff will be able to make minor modifications within the parameters that already exist with respect to that. So, you know, with a big track like this, things tend to move around. I don't mean drastic changes to the plan, but just simply tweaking it here and there to accommodate. For instance, today we accommodated by tweaking the industrial buffer plan to accommodate the all residential development. So we'll follow that buffer plan. Mr. Allison has met with the Chattahoochee Industrial Business Association, and they were quite active in both the Smyrna annexation and rezoning and the original Cobb County zoning. I know they've got representatives here tonight, so I'm sure that they'll want to speak. It's not unusual in this kind of context to have a developer that's making a density grab and wants more density. It's not unusual to have a developer that comes to you and wants leniency or variances to turn things on its head. You've got a massive downzoning here, and it also, we think, positively resonates with the city because we've met with some of your city council members and your staff as well. So for all these reasons, and because we think this completes the halo effect that was begun on Oakdale Road with the Oakdale Bluffs and the enclaves at Oakdale, we do ask respectfully that you follow your staff's recommendation for approval. With their stipulations and conditions, and the standard and special, and also the stipulations and conditions that we included in our February 2nd stipulation letter. So, Mr. Chairman, with that said, our team, as Mr. Allison has said, is ready to respond to any questions or address any concerns.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sams.
Thanks, sir.
All right, this is a public hearing. At this time, we'd like to ask anyone in attendance that would like to come forward and speak in favor of or opposition to this application. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record and sign the sign-in sheet. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Clint Stamps. I reside at 2286 Leafmore Drive in Decatur. Excuse me. I own 28 acres. My family owns 28 acres toward Veterans Memorial. Is there a possibility to get that land use map back out, the kind of the one that just kind of indicates
the site plan that
the site plan and the future site plan? First of all, I'd like to say that I did organize a meeting Friday with Neville Allison. I was surprised that this time around, through Garvis Sam, we never got notification that this was transpiring. The surrounding property owners, the CBIA, it was all due to the CBIA reaching out to someone with the Arden Company to have this meeting last Friday. This all was explained to us Friday, and as beautiful as it is, I possibly might want to move into it myself. And we're thrilled that it is the amount of downsizing. You can tell I'm nervous a little bit here, but so on the notification, I was disappointed. It might show the lack of people that are here today, that not even knowing this meeting is transpiring. I'd also like to make sure that the CBIA, the Chattahoochee Business Industrial Association, is still involved in all the stipulations that pass from Cobb County to pass the city of Smyrna and are still supposed to be being involved, at least some face-to-face time as this process is going on. It hasn't happened with this last go-around. Riverview Road is a huge concern of the businessmen and women that do their businesses on Riverview Road. And in this meeting Friday, we had conversation with Neville indicating that at the intersection between Riverview Road and Nichols, if it was all right with the city of Smyrna, they could eliminate a good many of those parallel parking. With the fact that the commercial is only going to go down to 5,000 square feet, and that was indicated to us it was going to be one and only one coffee shop, that possibly freeing up that intersection, because at the top of the street, you have 24-hour tractor-trailer use that comes, obviously 24 hours at all times with rather large loads. I'm on this far end. All that you see, the exposed dirt, is me. I've got a green environmentally company on the ground that recycles materials. So let me make sure it's going on the road. Okay, so I got the road. The buffering is another issue that we're having too. Right here, where the apartment complexes are going, to that land of dirt right there that you see, is the only buffer we're getting is a road that goes into the apartment complex and some grass. That's doing nothing for not being able to see anything, the dust that comes across, things that can be produced in the industrial type situations that we do. And it goes up toward the hill, toward Armstrong. And we look over at the top parts where you see all that green that they've got indicated. A lot of that's my property that they're using as buffer. I've got this lake down here, and that red line does not indicate the property line.
Mr. Stamps, hang on one second. Can we get the site pan back up that shows the buffer, please? That might make it a little easier for all of us to follow along. Thank you, Mr. Stamps.
Yeah, I've got both of them on here, so I'll just, so they can flip through the old one and the new one.
There.
This is the plan today.
Okay.
Right. So starting, can you point at anything? Is there a pointer? Well, starting down here at the bottom, bottom left-hand side, that is a lot of buffer, but there's no indication of any kind of planting. Across the street from Riverview Road, you see the second portion of the buffer zone, and as you see, that's a driveway into the complex. They have a good portion of the buffer indicating by the parking lot, and although there's space, there's nothing to hinder any kind of sight, anything from looking across. Up above is indicated a little bit better with the property lines, but it's the top of it where they're going to build the townhomes up on top. There's a huge slope going down to a creek into a lake my family owns. And there is some natural buffer up there. Going to the far end where the homes are, only thing I'm asking is we do need the buffers, and we need planted buffers, and we need something that's going to continue. As I indicated earlier, this is a beautiful concept. We're thrilled that it's downsizing. We're thrilled that the amount of cars going up and down the road are being limited. It will be wonderful. But at the same time, when Winnie Thompson brought this into the Division of Cobb County Commissioners, there was knowledge that we wanted to leave, the businessmen and women. We don't want to leave. This is how we pay our bills. And so we need to be able to continue with this beautiful concept. And so we need y'all to protect us on the buffers. We're not going anywhere. And let's see. Not only am I nervous, I'm blind. Okay. Buffer zoning. I think that's about it. I just can't, like I said, we did have a nice meeting. It was thrilling to see this concept being brought down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when people move into this development, if it's not done right, with the future and vision that we're all wanting in this area, I just feel like we're going to be at the losing end of it, even though we're in Cobb County, and this is City of Smyrna. But that's, right now, I think that's about all I got to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stamps, for coming. Really appreciate it. Anybody else that would like to speak in favor of or opposition to the application? All right. Mr. Sams, do you want to come speak a little bit about the buffer? Is there anything that you guys specific to protecting the businesses that are operational there?
As Mr. Martin says, the stipulations probably are unmatched in terms of the number of them with any zoning we've had here. But that doesn't mean any of them are less important than the others. One of the stipulations, if you'll notice, includes a recital that's going to be contained on every marketing document, every deed of conveyance, every quitclaim deed. Any kind of document that's a matter of public record will have a recital on it that specifically has a quote that the purchaser of the property understands that it is locating within an industrial compatible and a priority industrial area, so that there'll be no question that the ultimate owners of this property will be completely on notice of the area that surrounds it. The front door on Veterans, the back door on South Cobb Drive are not the most attractive in the world, notwithstanding the Pace Academy and the nice residential up towards South Cobb. But by the same token, we've got an enclave that is going to be absolutely cutting edge and beautiful. Let me tell you about what you're looking at here with this buffer plan. What we have is a buffer that, notwithstanding Mr. Stamp's protestations to the contrary, it's more than what was originally approved, and that was 894,510 square feet of buffer area. Now we propose 940,246 square feet of buffer. So the buffer not only replicates, but it adds on to what was originally there, and buffers Mr. Stamps and the other owners even more than was there. And it ranges up to 100 feet in width. And in the instance where we can't meet 100 feet, we've got to put in an 8-foot wall with landscaping. So if you really look closely at the minutia of the stipulations and conditions that were crafted during Cobb County between 2007 and 2011, and here between 2011 and 2013, and then the inordinate resources and amount of effort that Arden has put in, I don't think this could be any better position from a land use planning perspective, and I think that's how we gained your staff's recommendation for approval. But if I didn't answer specifically about the buffers, I'll be happy to do that.
I believe you said that it's pretty involved. Go ahead.
The only thing I really wanted to mention related to the buffer and the parking area for the apartment uses, if you look at the plan up there, that parking use in that driveway come through a utility easement with overhead power lines. So that southern property line is never going to have anything planted in it because the utility easement is not going to allow it to be done. And if we go to the next plan, it's in the same condition that was approved back in 2011.
Yeah.
Almost exactly.
Mr. Martin's referring to the power easement, which traverses the property at an angle. Obviously, even though we are owners of the property, it's a property that's encumbered by this easement, which has been a developmental obstacle, but by the same token, by virtue of its nature, whether it's planted or developed or not, it's a huge swath of land between our industrial properties to the north. But the brown portions that are Well, this is the old buffer plan here, but essentially the same. The brown portions are the buffers, and you can see that it's extraordinary in terms of width and length and density of the buffer.
I just want to clarify
Yeah.
for everyone to understand why that specific area is that way, and that there hasn't been a significant change from the original plan to the plan that's proposed. So, that being said, I'll be quiet.
None.
All right, I think that addresses the buffer issue as much as we can address it here with what we're dealing with. Any other questions for Mr. Sams? Anything I missed? Okay. Come on back up, Clint.
Right at the top of Nichols, where it goes Nichols and Armstrong, so you've got 3 industrial lots right there on the other side of those roads. There's no buffering. There's nothing. So that's just,
Right.
those are companies that have tractor trailers sitting in their lots. They will be coming down that hill. I just want to make sure that tonight, when we indicate and we pass this thing, that we really, there's nothing there.
I would think from a marketing perspective that Arden would want to take
I
care
would
of
think
that.
so.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you pointing that out. All right, any other discussion? All right, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Monroe.
I'd like to recommend approval of zoning request Z17003 with the stipulations and modifications that staff has recommended.
Got a motion to approve. Mr. Monroe, second. Ms. Lightfoot. Please vote. Why don't I see it? Nice. All right, the application is approved 7-0. Mr. Allison, you did say something that I don't remember Jamestown bringing up in their presentation about the river being an important focal point. And I mean, it was brought up, but you seem to focus on it. And I know, especially with the relationship of the businesses that are down there, and a big component that's missed this time that we didn't talk about at all is safety. The businesses down there, heavy industrial trucks moving in and out, they're really concerned about people getting injured, their drivers, injuring somebody. But bringing a focus on the river and improving that area down there, making it beachfront, like you said, I think it's a very, very important part of this project. And I would encourage you to be a good neighbor to these guys. They've been there a long time. And I really just, I believe that they understand that change is just part of it, and they just want to be able to coexist and not have their livelihood affected in an adverse way, which if this has success, I would imagine that the inverse of that could be true, especially for somebody that has 28 acres down there on Riverview Road. So.
Yes, sir. I'm taught to never talk past the close, but I will tell you, the buffer and the screening is every bit as important to us as it is the neighbors. It's important for the marketability, it's important for the aesthetics, it's important for the safety. This is, again, the old buffer plan, this is the new, and you can see that in the area that Rusty was talking to on the far left of the screen, where the entrance to or one of the driveways for the apartment community is, that building is 100 feet from the property line, which again is further than this one was. If you can see the edge of Jamestown's approved plan, they're right against the power easement there, and we're pulled away from the power easement, again, 100 feet from the property line. I want to make sure that everyone understands we're not utilizing the neighbor's property here, showing the buffers. The lines there are the property lines. This is overlaid on the tax map. I apologize if the aerial wasn't 100% accurate, but again, that's trying to follow a polygon on Google Earth, and it does not have the tax lines there. So, again, this is the buffer plan.
Good luck with your plan, and hopefully this time we'll actually see some real progress down there to get this thing behind us. So good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you,
care.
ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Any other discussion? No. I know. I'm not done. I haven't rang this thing yet. All right. Well, let's see here. Here we go. We need to approve the minutes from the January 9, 2017 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Are the members in possession of the minutes? Are there any changes that need to be made at this time? Nope. And the motion to approve the minutes as presented, Mr. Campo, second, Ms. Harrington. All in favor? The minutes are approved 7-0. Without any further business, this meeting is adjourned at They complained about me complaining about the thing. She got me a new one because I couldn't see it. Held in stunning reserve. Held in stunning reserve. That is our